Okay, so now that we know how to use the DMV triangle, I'm going to show you how to manipulate this formula, the density formula, in case you forget what order the DMV triangle goes in. So if you can't remember that triangle and it's just not something that's working for you, we're going to figure out today how to algebraically manipulate this formula so that we don't have to necessarily remember the triangle. Okay, so on a test or a quiz, or in real life when you're trying to find the density of something in the lab, say, it could happen that you have the density and the mass of an object and you need to find the volume. So we have to be able to rearrange this formula in order to solve for volume. So I'm going to give you some practice numbers here that just make our life a little easier. So if, let's say, you are given that the density is 10 grams per milliliter and the volume is going to be 5 milliliters, we're going to be solving for the mass. So the way I like to do this is I like to just plug these numbers into this equation here and then solve for mass. So let's try that. We have density is going to be 10 grams per milliliter, okay, and that's going to equal mass over 5 milliliters. Okay, in order to get this mass by itself, we want to isolate this mass. We're going to have to multiply on both sides by 5 milliliters. So all that does is that gives us the ability to cancel out this denominator, because this denominator is kind of a pain in the butt and we don't want that there. So if we multiply by 5, we can cancel out the denominator, and then we just multiply by 5 on this side, and that will give us 50. The milliliters cancel each other out. Grams, and that's going to be our mass. Okay, so for whatever substance this is, if the density is 10 grams per milliliter and I have 5 milliliters of it, then the mass of that object is going to be 50 grams. Okay, we can do this as well to find the volume. If I have the density and the mass of something, in order to find the volume, I can do something very similar. So let's take a look. Let's say, for example, that you're given a density of, we'll stick with the same numbers, 10 grams per milliliter. Our volume is going to be our question mark. That's going to be what we're trying to find. And our mass is going to be 5 grams. Okay, so if I'm trying to find out what the volume is, I have to set up the equation again. So density equals mass over volume. So I'm going to put that in down here. Density equals mass over volume, just so we don't forget. The density is going to be 10 grams per milliliter. The mass is going to be 5 grams, and I'm solving for volume here. So in order to isolate this volume, get volume by itself, I want to pull it out of the denominator, because I don't want something over volume, I just want to know what volume itself is. So I'm going to multiply by volume on both sides. That'll give me 10 volume equals 5. I'm dropping off the units here just for clarity's sake. And then we divide by 10 on both sides, and that gives me a volume of 0.5 milliliters. Okay, in this case, because we used grams per milliliters as our unit for density, the mass obviously is always in grams, and our volume is going to be calculated in milliliters here. Okay, so that is how we rearrange this density equation.